na ear, hear this one. This one na for this thing not that good, oh.
Lie, lie.
I say it not good, oh.
Lie, lie.
This thing not that good, oh.
Lie, lie.
No one knows tomorrow. Oh yes, oh yeah, make una open una ear, hear this one. This one na for EEDC, oh. EEDC wan defraud Southeast with exorbitant electricity bills with no adequate power supply. On top the matter be say, they no go give prepaid meter to their customers, but them go give illegal high estimated bills. They no wan know if light dey or e no dey. Instead of them to fix am, they go force people to pay the bills wey they no use, or them go cut the lights. I wonder how communities go use contribute money, buy their own power transformer, buy electricity cables, and yet pay huge amount of money to this obodo Naija corrupt EEDC, but they no go gree connect or bring the light. Even when they dismantle to repair community transformers wey spoil, they no go repair or return it to the communities. This issue don tire people o. Anambra State Governor Soludo, im don pay 100 billion naira to Emeka Offor and EEDC. This matter dey under agreement to provide light o, 24 hours light o. But from March 2023 until now, Anambra State still dey for darkness. Emeka Offor don frustrate other companies wey wan give us light. The koko be say EEDC na the reason why Southeast no dey develop. This thing no dey good, oh.
Lie, lie.
I say e no good, oh.
Lie, lie.
This thing no dey good, oh.
Lie, lie.
No one knows tomorrow. Oh yes, my people, una well done o. Obodo Naija don carry census bust out o. Oya bring your ear close make we yarn. Anywhere you dey, if na Biafran you be, whenever they wan count census for Nigeria, kukuma come back to Biafra land o. Make them count you in your own land, because during election they killed us in the north and Yoruba land, and na them still talk say we no get right to vote in their land. So time don come make we boost our population. And if you no fit return, selenge for your house, make you no participate, because them go add una number for the region where una dey. Another one be say, if you dey north and your tribe no be Fulani, when you wan fill the form, identify your tribe. No go write Fulani, e dey very important. In this census, if Biafrans go come back like tomorrow no dey, them go know say we plenty for this obodo Naija wey we dey so. We go use this census exercise to ascertain our population and the size of amenities wey we need in Biafran territory. Remember o, every obstacle wey we get for this freedom, IPOB don dey dismantle am small small, and this population census go be another evidence to that effect. All hail Biafra, Biafra will hail you.
Stand your ground and no fear. No dey from you, no see Biafra.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night, great Biafrans and lovers of freedom. Well, this is Radio Biafra HAUSA-SERVICE coming to you via Radio Biafra London. My name remains Mazi Chinedu from Olu province of Biafra land, and we are here live and direct. Today is the 18th day of May 2024. Tata Bobocheke. Therefore, I welcome each and every one of you to welcome your friends and well-wishers onto this hallowed platform, because we are in our Remembrance Month. That is why I have with me up to now Mazi Ukachi that is here with me in order to continue the Biafran education awareness dissemination. Is a very, very big revelation. Therefore, I want you to call your friends and well-wishers to join us on IPOB Community Radio in our application. It's a very low data consuming application. Moreover, we are also on our FM 102.1 in many parts of Biafra land. We are on satellite. On social media, you can listen to us through diverse ways, different options you have. We are on ipob.org. www.ipob.org. You can also listen through there. You can go live. Once you enter into our website ipob.org, now you type live, Radio Biafra live. You press there. Now you start listening. I could remember that was where I used to listen even right from the first time. Therefore, you have no option not to listen to this immense revelation. We have matured, we have been matured enough in order to tell our own story, to write our own history, because we have left our history in the hands of foreigners and our enemies, and they distorted history to the extent that, very, very bad. Therefore, do not neglect this program. It is very, very educative. This is the reason why today being Saturday, we are on the same program, and come next week we are going to be on the same program on Tuesday next week, Thursday and Saturday. Therefore, I urge you to listen attentively, and on the last day of this program, which is going to be on Saturday, please, if you have any question concerning this history or historical events that we are hearing, you can write it down, so that, because on the last day being Saturday, I will open the lines for Dr. Ukachi to take questions from the audience. You can ask on the last day, which is Saturday, come Saturday, in the next 7 days today, please. Therefore, without taking any much time again, I will hand over the platform to Mazi Lois Ukachi in order to continue the program. Mazi, please, over to you.
Good evening, Mazi. Jonathan, doing a great job. All your efforts, God bless you. Fellow Biafrans, lovers of freedom, I welcome you on today's hallowed platform, which was made possible by our leader, Mazi Nnamdi Kanu, for all the courage he has shown to give us the opportunity to revisit and assess where we are as a people. Freedom will not elude us forever, and the background to why we are suffering, some of it will be mentioned today. But today's broadcast is really one of the most painful, when you live in a country and your fellow countrymen turned against you and massacred you, and up till today no one has asked who is responsible, and we're all living with the scar of it. So brace yourselves, because it's going to get very, very bumpy and very, very sad. Whenever I read around this area, I always go away very, very sorrowful. So therefore, I pray that the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable unto the Lord, both my Redeemer, for he lives, for he will comfort each and every one of us. Because what we're about to hear is a tragedy which very few nations or tribes on this planet have faced. That we are still all survived as a people is a miracle in itself. So let me remind you that the music that cued us in, Onwuzuru, was by Rex Lawson and his band. That music was played, it had a lot of airtime, because it's like a balm, tried to calm and cushion the people of the eastern region for the tragedy they went through at that time. So by playing it, it evokes some memories, and it's indeed very emotive. Nevertheless, let me begin by reminding us where we stopped last broadcast. I think I asked a simple question: is pen mightier than the sword? Because when the northern Nigerians did their July 29 coup and split Nigeria, they were planning to secede, pull away from Nigeria. It was the British, their representative, their High Commissioner, called Francis Bruce, who persuaded them to do the opposite. So the Araba massacre was not just to kill Aghirensi and the Biafran, they are known as Eastern Region then, military personnel in the army. They had 7 points agenda, which I will talk later. The purpose was for the Northerners to escape the Lugadian cage. Lugadian cage being the British Lugard who joined North and South, and they all knew it wasn't going to work. And indeed, the Northern Premier called it a mistake of 1914. So they killed people of Eastern origin to get out of the cage. But the polar-loving British High Commissioner, Francis Bruce, persuaded the emirs to go back into this new British cage, which was then constructed, and Gowon was given the key to keep Nigeria one as his motto, which originally was an attack that must be done. So let me repeat. A key was handed to Gowon by the British to keep Nigeria one because of their huge investment interests. And therefore, that process became the attack that had to be done. And not only have they killed us to kick us out of Nigeria, they have to kill us to bring us back into Nigeria. So that's why Nigeria remained a mess. Blood-soaked land, and nothing seemed to work. So, let's go back then from July onwards, because this talk would be what happened from July onwards, 1966, to the Aburi Accord, 4th and 5th of January 1967. So what happened? As I told you, Nigeria drifted from the 29th of July till the 1st of August. There was no government. They were negotiating what was going to happen. The Northerners have packed all their family, had commandeered every vehicle, and they're all rushing back to the north because Araba means secession, means separating. Somehow, there's a U-turn. This U-turn is where the whole thing unraveled. So the Gowon then called a constitutional ad hoc conference in Lagos to see how all the remaining parts were going to stay. Because they remember they've been killing the Igbos in May of the same year. And when they assassinated Aghirensi and the soldiers of Eastern region origin, the country was in a mess, a chaos. So they're having a constitutional conference to decide how we're all going to live together. Proposals like, confederacy, is it a central government, is it a strong center, a weak center? They were discussing the best way forward. While this was going on, unknown to the delegation from the Eastern region, the Northerners unleashed more killings in the north. In the middle of the conference, more people in the north are being killed again. So the conference dissolved. And this is really when everything unraveled. Because the killing that followed after the conference was dissolved was even worse than we have heard before. These particular killings weren't something that just happened spontaneously. in the May killing, the May riots, which they blamed on Decree 34, trying to get the country together after the civilians, if you like, the politicians were kicked out of the office because of their corruption and all that. So what now happened is, having killed lots of people of Eastern origin, they then turned again to kill more of them. This was totally unacceptable to those of the Eastern region. There was nobody to protect them, because when Aguirre was the head of state, he sent troops to the north to quell that particular rioting. This time we have Gowon in charge, and he didn't seem to have the ability to stop any more killings. So we have what the press called uninhibited violence. It's like you're in a country and your fellow countrymen can just kill you anyhow. Anywhere they see you, you've been killed. The police is not there to help you. In fact, the police joined in. If you run to a police station, they burn the police station and you inside. And that's a police station, law and order, broken down. When you're in the street, the army will join the rioters to come and kill you, and there's nobody to protect you. The army, the security forces, were supposed to look after ordinary citizens. The citizens of the Eastern region had nowhere to run to. Wherever they turned, they were killed. So this is what I'm really talking about today, because that's the worst kind of pogrom it was later called, because as a result of that killing, from July right all the way to October, non-stop killing. The northern region was emptied. They stopped the killing when there's nobody else to kill. That's basically it. It was empty of people of Eastern origin. People talk about the numbers. Maybe 7,000, 10,000, 30,000. Nobody really knows. The estimates range up to about 100,000 people who were killed. The people injured are usually more, but their injury was horrific. Was maimed for life. Some managed to get back home. They never were the same. And that is just before the war started, by the way. Up to 1.8 to 2 million people flooded back to the eastern region. As a result of this, within this period, Gowon took over. Non-stop killing. So, what did the people of the East do? Well, it's not a case of guessing what happened to us. Those who ran back, who survived, were asked to come to a tribunal and under oath to give evidence of what happened to them. Not every one of them, of course, was able to come. So the Eastern Nigerian government, which Odumegwu was looking after, the civil servants and the government of the Eastern region, they commissioned a report. They got chief judges to sit in a tribunal of inquiry, so that if you say such and such happened to you, you have to say under oath and you'll be cross-examined by smart lawyers to find out if you're lying or not. And their evidence was recorded, and it is called the Onyuke Tribunal. So I hope one day every school, particularly in the Eastern region or the Biafran, will read this tribunal report of what actually happened to us. Because they're not going to tell you, your enemy's not going to tell you. Nigeria refused to talk about it. No one has been charged for what they did. At least when the Jews, what they suffered during the Second World War is documented. But they want to sweep this one under carpet. And they're still killing. If it stopped 1966, or if you like, the war set 1970, and that's it, everybody's now friends. You can talk about it as a history lesson. That is a different matter. But the fact that they're still killing today means they have not taken it seriously. And our people are still suffering. For how long? When Nnamdi Kanu talks about it, he's committing an offense when the real offense and injury to our people have not been addressed. So it is an opportunity on this Hello platform to then discuss as much as I can what happened to our people, but very selectively, because we can be here all day for weeks talking about this commission. So the tribunal sat for a whole 49 days, okay? They sat for 48 days, 49 days. They interviewed the survivors, 253 of them, and it took them, they looked at the exhibition of 496 people who brought evidence of what they were talking about. They were cross-examined. So this is a very powerful, potent document of what happened to our people. They had this starting from December 1966 to June 1967. It tells the gruesome story of the massacres of over 30,000 persons of Eastern Nigerian origin. They were Igbos, not just Igbos, Ibibio were involved. Efik people were involved. Ndoki were involved. Ijo were involved. Okreka were involved. Ogoni, etc. So all these people, they looked at their pay from May to October 1966. It's an event which immediately preceded the Civil War, they call it, what I call the Nigerian Biafran War. It's like you are outside and you have an argument or had a fight with a stranger, if you like. That stranger chased you to your compound, breaks into your gate, you run into your house. He follows you into the front door, breaks down, you go to the kitchen, he chases you into the kitchen, you escape to the garden, he comes to you in the garden, there's nowhere else for you to run to. Non-stop killing. And then they ask you to come back to the outside where you started to kill you more. So when is this killing going to stop? So I'm saying to you, all this was documented so that there's no, excuses for the future generation not to know what happened to us as a people. So it's due to Ojukwu's leadership that this commission was set up, and they interviewed the people under oath, and they were able to extract as much information as possible. So the tribunal, they sat in Enugu, they took it to Onitsha, Aba, Port Harcourt, Calabar, Oyo, and Ogoja, and they recorded the evidence, they indexed it, and they put it in volumes. So it is available as a document for people to read. But our people find it difficult to read and understand things. So this Hello platform, and of course the season we're in, allow us to the best of our ability to explain what actually happened to our people. So I will now proceed in telling you the gory story of our people went through. The first thing to say is that, well, what was the motive behind this killing of people of Eastern origin? And someone traced it to say, well, they had a reason for doing all this. There's some sort of a master plan which they unleashed on their unsuspecting fellow citizens at that time. And they call it a 7-point agenda. The 7-point agenda is based on the tension which they feel they've got to get revenge, as usual. Revenge, but you pick the wrong people to revenge. So let me just go over what the, if you like, the motives behind the killings. Okay, so one of them, of course, is they want revenge for, Amadu Bello and Tafawa Balewa. and they want that revenge, and the amount of killing is not enough because they want to make sure Azikiwe is killed, Opara is killed, Ojukwu is killed, Nzegu is killed, and all the Igbo personnel, rich, famous, educated, are all wiped out. And they plan to leave only sucklings and babies, okay, so to be left behind. So how can you go about living in the same country with people whose intention is to wipe you out from the face of the earth? People did not understand the extent of the hatred. That is really the main problem, the extent of the hatred. So this commission looked into the motives as to why they wanted to carry out and exact this pound of flesh. Number one is to kill Major General Girensi. They succeeded. To kill all the Yamari army officers, they wiped out over 200 of them. To subsequently purge the army of Yamari by killing the rest of them in the army. So they want to get rid of the Nigerian army. No Igbo person or Eastern origin should be there. They succeeded. We're talking 1966. Because if you're of the Eastern origin, you're no longer safe outside Eastern region as a military personnel. And they say with the aid of the Westerners, the Yorubas, in the army, they want to take complete control of the armed forces, take over the police, the navy, and to purge off the Yamuri, what they call the Eastern region, of these forces too. So they want to clear everyone who is of Eastern origin from the police, from the navy, from the army, and if they had an air force, the same thing. Basically, all the security officers. And you know of recent events where all the security chiefs, and none of them is from the East. So they have succeeded. The next is to kill off and dispose of all the, what they call the Nyamiri, all the Easterners domicile in the northern region. So they kicked out every single person. They succeeded. Then to use the control of the armed forces to take complete control of the country's government. So if you're in charge of the army, the security forces, you control the government. At that time, they succeeded. They said they want to revenge Sadwana, Abubakar, and then the death by killing Azikiwe, Opara, Ojukwu, Nzegu. Well, Nzegu died just before the war started. They didn't kill Zik or Opara or Ojukwu. They failed in those ones. They wanted to destroy Port Harcourt, Enugu, University of Nsukka, and so on. So those are, and finally, the 7th point is all Nyamiri top civil servants post to be killed, all wealthy Nyamiri, male and female, to be eliminated, all Nyamiri educated giants to be got rid of, all grown-up males and females, Yamuri, to be killed, and their plan is to leave only sucklings of in the Yamuri land. So your land was actually part of the agenda. If there's nobody to challenge them, you take over your land. So that was their 7-point agenda. How was this discovered? Well, among the witnesses, so the controlling idea behind this plan was to exterminate all the Easterners to a point where the northern region will be ahead in every sphere of life, and to be in a position to dictate to their younger generations what to do. So the circumstances in which the 7-point program came to be disclosed were made by witness number 8. His name is SWAN Onoha. So these are, not just speculation. The people who witnessed and understood it came forward under oath, cross-examined, and declared it. He said that the 7-point agenda program appeared on the face of it to be fantastic, people find it difficult to believe it, too diabolical to be entertained by the human being, and the least of all your fellow nationals. But when one sees the evidence, the atrocity of all of it in that aspect, it ceases to sound that fantastic. They did try to exterminate all the Easterners in the north. Now, the Kanu massacre, I'm going to pick some specific parts of the north. Kanu, perhaps Katsina, and a place called, Kanji Dam, just to illustrate the plans they had. So, there's the Kanu massacre of 1966 showed that they did their utmost to achieve their aim in the principal towns. So the major towns that were involved, at least with the forces at their disposal. Witness number 125, called Paul Okawa. Right, I'm going to begin with him. He looked every inch like a Ghanaian. This was what saved his life. Okay, so looking like a Ghanaian. He gave us a graphic description of what happened in Kanu in October riots. So I'm going to read to you the evidence he gave in the court. This is not hearsay. And under cross-examination. This is what he said. He said, after July incident, because they were killing in July, after July incident, he said many Igbos in the north started to pack up to go because they killed the UNC, they killed so many military personnel. So those in the north, they started becoming jittery. So they're packing their things to go. It was then that the remaining Igbo teachers in primary and secondary schools were determined to leave Kanu. But a week before the August holidays, a team of school inspectors, white and black, police officers and native authorities, police came to our schools to assure us that our lives were no longer in danger. Remember that? They have plans, but they come and send people who come and pacify, reassure you that you're going to be okay. We're not going to do anything to you. Now, on the strength of these assurances, the teachers returned from the holiday, came back. A week before October massacres of Igbos in Kanu occurred, they all came back. So somebody called Mustafa Gashash, a student of Igbo Union Grammar in Kanu, met me on the school premises and advised me to leave Kanu before the 1st October because northern soldiers and civilians were going to kill all the Igbos in Sabongari. Let me explain that. When you get to live in the north, they allow you to live outside the main wall gates. They allow you to live in what are called strangers' quarters. That's what Sabongari means. So they know you as a target population, you are strangers. You came into their land. So they know where you live. So Sabongari, therefore, it's a bit like ghetto, but except that the people living in those Sabongari were educated, they had offices, they were privileged pariahs, as I keep talking. It's a sociologist terminology. You are hated, but you have the where and wherefore. You have the money, you have the job, but you're not fitted in, you're a stranger in the land. So this guy was tipped off. He said, I had no means of leaving since all train services between East and North had been discontinued. They stopped the trains. The alternative was to leave by air. So during this week, my wife, my brother, my boy were with me. On Tuesday of that week, I looked for accommodation, booked it, and the four of us for 132 shillings, pounds and 16 shillings, to travel from air to Lagos the following morning, Wednesday. When we arrived at the airport, the white officers and the northerners on duty told me there was no accommodation for us that morning and advised us to report at 2:30 p.m. We were then told to report again at 6:30 p.m. So they postponed it the same evening. Again, when we arrived, we were told we could no longer travel that day. The same thing happened on Thursday and the Friday that week. So they were being postponed, not allowed to fly away. On Friday evening, when the last plane had left the airport, I went to one of the northern duty officers and asked whether or not we could travel again. He assured me that nothing would stop us from traveling on the 1st of October. Well, we could not travel in the morning, in the afternoon, so therefore at 6:30 p.m. on the 1st of October, we arrived at the airport. And to my greatest surprise, I saw a sight that drove fear into my heart. Literally, all the northern ex-politicians had gathered at the airport in their immaculate white gowns. I saw Aminu Kanu, one of the politicians. I saw Matema Sule. I saw Inua Wada. Many Europeans also came to the airport. Exactly at 6:50 p.m., soldiers in green shirts, trousers invaded the airport. I had a presentiment, so it's a premonition, that something horrible, something bad, can feel it in his bone, was in the air. And as we sat near our luggages, we wondered whether these ex-politicians, remember they've been banned from holding office. So whenever these ex-politicians and their European, Asian and Arab friends had come to witness the final degradation of our people, soon shots were heard everywhere. That day was declared a public holiday, and as usual, many Igbos came to the airport. Many of us who could not fly were surrounded by soldiers. One soldier ordered me outside and asked me where I came from. When I told him I was a Midwesterner, he told me I was lying because he knew where I came from. What I heard was about to turn, quick march. I heard a shot behind me and I fell down and I passed out. How long I was there before I came round, I could not tell. But when I became conscious, a heap of dead men was on me. Some still breathing, but others stone dead. It took me some time to extricate myself from the dead bodies heaped on top of me. I crept over other dead bodies and tried to hide because soldiers were still shooting people down in their hiding places at the airport. Presently, I found myself in the big kitchen. The whole length and breadth was littered with dead bodies. This is an airport in those days. So, if you like, imagine people storm into an airport anywhere in the world and they kill so many people in the airport. So, the two HAUSA stewards in the kitchen refused me entry until I said I paid them £5. And within seconds of my entry, about the army, northern soldiers entered the kitchen shouting, "Are there any more Opara's brothers hiding here?" Opara being, of course, the premier of the Eastern region, Dr. Michael Opara. So they call them Opara brothers. So I was again saved because I was among the dead and pretended to have died also. When I could no longer hold out, I got up and walked to the table where one of the stewards was sitting. I shouted, "Please take me to the soldiers. I can no longer stand the strain." Somebody emerged from under the big table on hearing me. His name is Mr. Lekiti. He's a Ghanaian who apparently was hiding from the savage soldiers. We decided to give ourselves up to the soldiers. He was my uncle, and I was his nephew. So that was their strategy. This strategy worked wonderfully. And when the soldiers heard us, they shouted in unison, "Why have you been hiding?" We didn't want to kill Ghanaians. They are our friends. The Yorubas are our friends. ethics, all are our friends. We are after Opara brothers. So this is specific targeted to a tribe, the Igbo tribe. Okay? We are going to finish them off, he said. They took us upstairs where we saw more dead bodies, some of whom I recognized. Mr. Lekiti and myself gave them £10 for a drink. They drank until 6 a.m. The following morning, you have two on the 2nd of October. These soldiers had had some harsh thing to say about Opera and the Igbos. Opera was their arch enemy who must be destroyed. Why did they kill our leaders while Opera, Zik, or Sadebe were all left out? Running theme. Mbadiwe was the only Igbo man who would be spared in the march to the eastern region. So from the 2nd of October 1966, they were planning and plotting to march down to the eastern region because he was a good man. They said, now, all other Igbos must be destroyed. Now, at 7 a.m. the same Sunday morning, they asked Mr. Lakiti and myself to get ready because they were going to show us how we dealt with our para brothers and sisters. They took us to the railway station in an army Land Rover. And there we saw a sight which I would never like to see again to my dying day. Over 700 men, women, and children have been mowed down. They have been killed while they were waiting for a train to take them to our region, main eastern region. A few of the children were still creeping over the dead mother, shouting, "Mama, I am hungry, I want to drink." Some were trying to suck their dead mother's breasts and left them to suck on. It should be borne in mind that 3 days before this is one of the tricks. Before this unprecedented massacre, 3 days earlier, it was announced over Kanu Rediffusion Network that a passenger train would be leaving Kanu to Eastern Region on the 2nd of October, and that all those wishing to travel should report on the 1st of October at the railway station. 1st of October, of course, being the day of independence of Nigeria from Britain. So the 1st of October is usually, if you like, a holiday. So if you're going to the east, come on the 1st of October. So over 700 Igbos packed to the railway station. The announcement was caused to be made by someone called Mr. T. George, a senior trench officer who incidentally is a native of Idoma. He was educated at Methodist College, Uzakoli. He was a member of the Nasara Club. Nasara Club is where they did all the planning, and attended all the meetings where it was decided to kill all the Igbos in Kanu. They drove us to the local running shed. It was the same sad story of murder. All of the Igbo workers who had reported for duty were killed. Next, we were taken around to Sabongari. It was the same massacre of Igbos in hotels, where they had gone to relax because it was a public holiday. All the hotels were littered, filled up with dead bodies. In the Sabongari, everywhere we went, we saw dead and dying Igbos. No tinge of compunction ever touched the conscience of these soldiers, who, on the night of October 1st, joined their civilian northern brothers to loot, pillage, kill our kith and kin. After we had seen enough, they took us back to the airport, where they continued killing those who were suspected of being Igbos. So a mere suspicion of being an Igbo, they killed you. A further £10 from us reassured us that they were not in any immediate danger, although one of the soldiers had doubted my identity in particular, and he looked me aside. He took me aside and said, asked me in honesty if I was really a Ghanaian. I assured him I was Ghanaian and gave him another £5 more into the bargain. I asked him to take me around to see more of the Opera's dead brothers. Because the sight intrigued me, my motive really was asking him that was far from being disinterested. On the contrary, I mainly wanted him to take me around to see if I could stumble upon the dead bodies of my wife, my brother, and my boy, whom I had not seen since we were separated. My fears were soon confirmed. I saw the dead bodies of my brother and my boy near where I was supposedly killed. I mastered in my emotion reaction because he was watching me all the time and went round the airport where there were heaps of dead bodies. But I could not see that of my wife. I saw other countless dead bodies I could well recognize. There were men, women, and they came to the airport to see friends off and were killed together with their friends. Now, from the airport to Sabongari, the road was littered with dead bodies. They were packed, or they were picked out one by one along the road as they were trying to escape from the airport and shot in their cars, in a bicycle, and scooters, and on foot. Meanwhile, when these soldiers had walked through the money and given to them, Mr. Lakiti and myself gave them another 20 to allow us to remain in the airport until all the houses in Sabongari had been sacked. On the 4th of October, 4 days now, the soldiers informed us that they could no longer guarantee our safety. All this time, there was still isolated case of shooting and beating up in the people suspected to be Igbos. So we went back to Sabongari, but the Yorubas we met refused to give us protection because they said they knew me. I tried one of the European friends I knew, but each of them swore they would rather die than give me protection, since they were warned previously not to give any Igbo man or woman any protection. There was no point going to a church compound, since almost all the people who ran into such compounds on the 1st of October were beaten up and shot by Hausa soldiers. I saw over 100 dead bodies on the Roman Catholic Church compound. I saw over 200 dead bodies in and outside St. Stephen's Church. A few Igbo Union Grammar School girls had been raped by Hausa soldiers. There were quite a few of these girls who would not live to tell their tales of woe. I saw one, Rosaline Metu, a class 3 girl. I saw the look on her face. She had gone beyond saving. These helpless girls have been abandoned to their fate to die in that cursed place. So this is one of the witnesses. If you analyze the category of what he went through, this is just from in the airport where he was shot in the back. The bullet didn't go deep enough to puncture his brain, and it wasn't superficial enough to keep him alive. He was knocked out, unconscious, and they piled bodies on top of him. In the airport, they went into the plane that was London bound to Lagos, that parked in Kanu. They went inside the plane and dragged out the passengers. The Igbos were lined up and shot. So people who have been abroad, they're coming back to Lagos via Kanu. They'll kill them. Those who worked in the airport were killed if they're Igbo or suspected of being Igbos. And those who are traveling between the airport and the town, if they're suspected to be Igbo in their cars, in their bicycle, wherever it is, they were killed. We go to Sabongari, dead body everywhere. The next morning, they send the garbage collector van to go and pick up all the dead bodies and dump them in mass graves, buried some 20, some 30, and so on, and chucked in the grave. So that is just Kanu, okay? And he's got an eyewitness account. It's not a made-up story. This happened. The issue isn't To what extent? Well, if you analyze it further, this happened in Kanu, it happened in Kaduna, it happened in Zaria, it happened in Maiduguri, it happened in Yola, it happened in Sokoto. And okay, he said, yeah, it's possible that it spread from one town to another. No, it didn't spread. If you throw a pebble inside a pond, it will ripple outwards, granted. But if this happened simultaneously in Katsina, in Kanu, Kaduna, Zaria, Kafanchan, and they all happened on the same day, the same night, within hours or so of each other, they went to the villages and they carry people in vans and cars that belong to the native authority. The native authority are the people who run northern Nigeria. So they organized to use those buses, the vans, and so on to carry people from the village to come into the town where the Igbos left were trying to run away, mixed with the military. The military protected them. They just went in ransacking, killing as many Igbos as possible. So it was planned. I forgot to tell you that of all the things they had sticks, stones, guns, arrows, poison arrows, military with their guns and so on. But the most important thing that they had, which was unbelievable, is that they were armed. Let me repeat that. They were armed with typed address where the Igbos lived, typed addresses. So if someone tells you, say, oh, well, was it right? It's just a spontaneous venting of anger. No, it was well planned. Yeah? Well planned. The people who planned, they are so organized. They know where the Igbos lived. They know the addresses. So they actually visited them. Some of them, if you read their account, suddenly in the middle of the night, people were outside. They're knocking, breaking through your house. And some hid in the attic and in the roof, and they searched everywhere, didn't see them. They can't come down because if they came down, they get killed. So they have to drink their own urine to keep their thirst. Some went into the bush for days. One of the victims had broken legs and had to stand in the water for 2-3 days before they finally was safe for them to come out. Some who were injured were taken to the hospital, not to be cured or to be treated, but to be killed and put in mortuary. So it's very, very painful to tell you the full category of how they went about to kill our people. When they went to the teaching, if you nursing schools or any institution where the Eastern women were studying, they rounded them up, they took them to the leper colony, and they were gang raped. There are some they found in the hotel. They packed broken bottles in their private parts. I don't want to go into any more detail because I think you got the picture. The idea is not just to kill, but to humiliate and make sure you don't go back to their country. Okay? So the whole thing is documented. I urge you to read UK's report, the Tribunal report, because it's well documented. So now, let's look at this situation. There were some element, they were actually deliberate in the way they went about it, and it was planned. They didn't do it overnight. It's not spontaneous because it happened in various other cities at the same time. In Katsina one, the Emir of Katsina was leading. He was driving along in his wonderful car along the high road, encouraging people to go and do the killing of the Igbos. Yeah, say, leave their property, just kill them, and then all the property will be yours. Some who own stores, yeah, there's not even a pin was left in their store. They swept everything out. Everything was carried. So they're not only killing them, they're catching all their properties. So the whole thing, and there was nobody to rescue them. And to make the matter worse, it was so well planned that before this rioting starts, you wonder why it was on the 29th of May, 29th of July, 29th of August, 29th of September. You think it's not planned? Before this happened, They gave the impression that everybody who has any weapon, guns, should surrender it. Of course, being from a different part of the country, you comply with the law. So the Igbos handed over their weapons, but the owners of the land kept theirs. So when they came to attack, there was nothing for you to protect yourself. Okay? So there are so many things when you study what they did to us, what they did to the Easterners, you wonder where we're still, talking to them, where we're still in the same country. Why we're saying that we're rebels, when in fact they are the ones who made sure you never came back to their province. Let me share with you what happened. I'm not going to talk about Kanu and Kassini anymore because of the time. Let me tell you what happened at Kanji Dam. Because if it was a report by just the Igbos, then it would be a different matter. Kanji Dam, as most of you would know, is an artificial dam being constructed at the time. It's in a place called Busa, the River Niger, on behalf of federal government. The people building this dam were Italians. So the dam is being constructed by an Italian company called Impreglio SPA. The operation had drawn to a large concentration of Easterners. Most people from the East went to help build this dam. They provided the main bulk of the workforce. Now, according to the witness, there were about 6,000 Easterners at the Kanji Dam. Now, it says that the worst slaughter was perpetrated at the Kanji Dam police station. This is how this one went. It was a combined operation between the police and the civilians. The most important witness, his name is Clement Biafra, is the number 57 witness. Remember, they're cross-examined. They have no reason to lie. There's nothing to be gained. They have wounds to prove what happened to them. So this is his account. He said on the 9th of the 29th and 30th of September, the mass killings continued. And the worst of it all, at the Kanji Dam police station, by a combined force of both the Nigerian police of northern origin and, of course, the civilians. Now, a police van fitted with a loudspeaker had been operating through the town, informing any Easterner who wishes to go back to the east to assemble at the police station in order that necessary arrangements could be made for their evacuation. This is very interesting. So let me make sure we understood that. At Kanji Dam, there was killing, people were hiding. So then they want to get more people out. They say, oh, there'll be a train going, we want to make arrangements to take you back to the east. So if you report to the police station and we do all the necessary arrangement, a loudspeaker driven by a car going around the town, so those Easterners who are hiding heard about it. So wonderful, great stuff, Wow, we're going to be saved now. So when the remaining Easterners, those they haven't killed, assembled at the police station with their loads, we all sat down waiting for further instructions for our repatriation, little knowing that we had come face to face with death. It was in fact an appointment with death. But the next moment, a group of unruly Hausas appeared once more with their death weapons and chanting war songs, grinning at us and positioning themselves strategically around the building. After a time, the police arrived in great number and asked us whether we were now ready to go back to our region. We joyfully say, yes, yes. Then one of the Hausa civilians stepped out, mockingly asked us if there was anything we could do if we began to shoot us. If he began to shoot us, is there anything you can do? Before we had time to answer his question, he had already let go his Dane gun in our midst. The frantic scramble to escape ensued. The police participated in the killing of many of us. During this shooting, I lost a relative, Mr. Raphael Mabisi, age 26, a motor driver with Impreglio SPA Kanji. The looting of our property started immediately, simultaneously with the killing. From a corner where I was, I could see the police helping the civilians to make away our property. All my properties were, of course, carried away. They were carried away. Now then, here's a cross-examination by the judges, by the lawyer. This massacre of police station at Kanji Dam, what day would that be? He said, on the night of the 29th of September. Then he says, the question is, around what time? It's around 9 o'clock and 10 p.m. it started and continued. Next question. Would it be correct to say that the Easterners were tricked into assembling a Kanji Dam police station to enable them to massacre you? The answer is yes. And the trick was practiced by, well, it was performed by the police. You as law-abiding citizen trusted the police as your protector? The answer is yes. Would it be correct to say that were it not for this trick practiced on you by the police, perhaps these vandals might not have had the opportunity to slaughter you as they did? Well, the answer is they might not have had the opportunity to slaughter Easterners en masse. The next question. Immediately before the attack on the 29th, how many Easterners would you estimate gathered at the police station? Oh, very many. Give us an idea. Over 2,000, he said. During the lengthy cross-examination that followed, the witness gave further details of police civilian formations, the preparation to the attack. So what happened? Well, we were all outside waiting for the lorry to come and convey us home. They, the mob leaders, were inside the police station building, but we did not know what they were discussing. After their discussion, the police marched them from the building to about 50 yards away from the police station facing the market. Then the police left them and came back. So they went to the police station. Whatever they discussed, nobody knew. Police marched them 50 yards away to the market, and then police went back inside. Now the mob stood there singing their war songs and waiting for time. I can now conclude that their discussion in the room was just in connection with how they would take positions when they came to attack us at about 9:15 p.m. They, having gathered in large numbers, began to come, singing their war songs towards us. Then the policemen all carried their guns and went outside, took their positions, facing them and pointing their guns as if they were going to shoot them. But still they were coming. We had at the back of our minds that at least the police would defend us. But when they came near, the policemen, they gave them away and they came and surrounded us. Then the police at the time faced us and pointed a gun at us. Then the massacre started. So what happened was that if any Easterner ran towards the police would shoot at them. The police was on the main road so that nobody could pass. So who were these policemen? asked the lawyer. You said these policemen were Northerners. Yes. Can you be more specific? Can you tell where most of them come from? Well, at the time when we thought things were normal at the Kanji Dam, we had many of the policemen from Kaba province. But after the July incident, they transferred the whole of them away. Then they brought policemen whom we did not know and were not familiar with. So you see what happened? They swapped the people who would be familiar with the workers, moved them out, brought in new fresh policemen who were bent on destroying them. Then the next question, how long before September were they transferred? Well, it was between the first week in September and the middle, because the new set of policemen arrived before the 15th of September, even with their own assistant superintendent police. He was also a new man. So they went and said, we may mention at this junction that it was left to the Italian workers of the Impreglio company to do the rescue work and to send some of the wounded to their hospital. Much innocent blood was shed during these disturbances. Confidence was destroyed. The bridge of the friendship between the East and the non-Hausa speaking areas, which was built over years of contact and association, was broken by the tragic event. So I gave an illustration of the type of inquiry that went in detail of what happened to the survivors. Those who were brave enough, who were not maimed enough, were able to give evidence to this inquiry, to give an indication of what actually happened to our people. It's not just hearsay, it's not rumors, it's not anecdotal. We have evidence of what happened. So that was Ilorin. Ilorin is not quite strictly speaking in Hausa land, but it's supposed to be Yoruba. What happened in Yoruba? Because I mentioned to you, there's no town in the north that was safe for the Igbos. Those in the far north, like Sokoto, Katsina, and so on, those who managed to escape in trains and buses and foot and whatever, when they get to Makodi, they got to cross the River Benue, and the train was being stopped, the place searched, the women taken out to be gang raped. Some had their head beheaded and put back in the train. Okay, it's a classic case that made it to the Biafra stamp, postage stamp. One man who, let me see if I can find his name for you, is a very 6-footer, tall guy. They chopped his head off, opened up his abdomen, his intestines were gushing, arms and leg injured, and they put him back in the train. So when he arrived at Enugu, people were horrified that someone could do such a thing. He's a 6 foot taller. His name is Onwu Anibe. Aniebu was traveling from north, escaping from the north. When he got to Okfupo, Railway Bridge Station, they pulled him out, beheaded him, ripped his abdomen, cut arms, and they put him in the train without his head, so that when they arrived in Enugu, everybody was horrified. As I said, that image was made into Biafran postage stamp to remind us of what happened. So, it's just something to mention. Now, I'm going to tell you about the horrific, because this, if you like, this commission report looked into what they call the most terrifying or planning behind what happened to our people. They looked at the revolting aspect of it. If you're able to get hold of this book, yeah. So it's in chapter 7 of it is where they talked about the what's the best way to describe it? The repulsive, how did they put it? Bear with me. They called it the, let me get the exact thing so I'm not misleading anybody. So you can have it for yourself. They called it the revolting aspect of the actual killings. In other words, how bad, how degrading it was, the revolting aspect of the pogrom. They said under this particular section, they consider the sinister aspect of the pogrom in various categories. First, the planning and the organization of the pogrom. He said, we have dealt with this at length in the previous sections. There's this sense of false sense of security to which the authorities lured the victims, and the barefaced deception practiced on their victims for them was particularly appalling. So these are the lawyers saying these people who were being massacred, they were lured, they were tricked, brought in so more of them could be killed by lying, deception. Okay? Takia, after all, is a clever thing that is deployed by those who practice their religion. They believe that they can tell you lies because you are an infidel. So takia, something used here. So they said in the the Kanu slaughter, the 1st and 2nd of October 1966, singularly successful because of this device. Easterners were lured to Kanu from many places in the far north. And the plan is to take a train to the east that was supposed to leave on the 1st of October when, in fact, none of the train was scheduled to leave. And when the Easterners had gathered at the rail station, soldiers were then let loose on them, and the carnage was the result. Another aspect of this practice of deception took place in many towns in the north. When Easterners got wind of any impending attack and started to make arrangements to run, to quit, the authorities would make pronouncements refuting, saying, no, denying the rumor and assuring the Easterners of their safety, and then later only to have them slaughtered within 24 hours of giving this false assurance. The disarming of Easterners I mentioned before the impending attack was yet another aspect of the pogrom. Easterners were disarmed, yet their potential assailant, those who are going to attack them, were left with their weapons. It is obvious that were it not for the seizure of the arms carried out by the state functionary, these are the police, the people who are running the country at that part, went and collected all the guns from the Easterners. And it was most unlikely that the victims would have been willingly surrendered their weapons if there wasn't a law to that effect. Then thirdly, the evidence disclosed where the in the case of Northerners descending on Easterners and shooting, macheting, and clobbering them to death, they embarked on various methods of torture and humiliation. One of the witnesses, called Dick Iwebi, they called him witness number 72, said one of the main dreadful one was how they crucified a person. They grabbed a heavy rod, tied it across their back or the chest of the victim with their hands stretched and secured firmly on the rod. So now this victim is standing, hand tied in a rod, okay? He is then helpless as a man nailed on a cross. In this position, they will then proceed to torture the victim by plucking out his eyes, cutting his tongue, cutting his genitals. Another method is holding a victim, killing him like a goat, with a sharp knife, to the full gaze of other victims. In one of the cases on the 2nd of October, in a place called Mada Railway Station, where they saw 4 northern soldiers, one of whom is called Mai Kafi, and the other is called Mai Yanka. Just a name they call him, most powerful man and a great killer of human beings and so on. But I did not know the names of the other 2 soldiers. Now, Mai Yanka, the great killer of human beings, asked one Igbo man who was a boiler attendant at the railway station and why he locked the pipe. This Igbo guy said that he locked the pipe because there was no train coming. Then Mai Yanka told him to shut up his foolish mouth. After saying this, he and the other 3 soldiers called all of us to come and see how they will kill our brother Igbo man like a goat. And really, we all were forced to come and witness it. In a minute, the man was gripped by them. All of them, the Mayor Yanka, took out his 2-edged sword and cut his head like a goat, as he said, at which the man's blood spread all over our bodies like water spouting from a tap. As a matter of fact, we were all both horrified and gripped by fear. So I'm going to just pause for a while, because you can carry on when you read this account, the horrific, tragedy that befell our people. So what was happening then? No matter what we do to human beings, there'll always be witnesses who survived. Yeah? So there was therefore a mass exodus. People started looking for how to get back to the eastern region. All the mami wagons, all the lorries were crammed full of people. And one of the pictures, you see them not only across River Niger, but stretching from the head bridge all the way across, lorry packed of literally hundreds and hundreds of people, all fleeing, coming from the north, coming from the south, coming from, everywhere, just trying to escape. So they came by road, by rail, some walked non-stop, by plane. Okay? So when you look at the injuries they had, there are multiple wounds inflicted by bullets, by axes, by arrows, mobs. As the train is passing through, they're throwing things at them, jeering at them. When they got to Enugu, most of them were rushed to the hospital, limbs riddled with bullets, bayonet driven into their waist, life saved only through the surgeons who were at Enugu Teaching Hospital at the time. Okay, using some skills. It was said that of the intake of 200 or 2,000 refugee patients, jam-packed the Enugu General Hospital, only 2 people died out of the 2,000. So surgeons worked non-stop. They had people whose hands were severed there to stitch the hands back at the airport when they arrived. There's an old man who was shot through the mouth and, of course, his genitals removed, and he's being fed through his NG tube, nasogastric tube. The eyes were being gouged out, is quite common when they arrive. There are some were so too horrific to mention. So, as I keep saying, But if we don't talk about it, we would not know. Some have been 5 days in the bush without food, and they had to walk 300 miles before they got to safety. There's a lady who arrived, lost entire family in the north. The bitterness of the relationship, she was leaning to one of her relatives. And the bold result of determination of the Eastern government, so to rehabilitate them. So there's a lot that went through. When you see their pictures, you're like, God, you'd be ashamed. And this I'm compiling in a magazine which Bede will produce. So it is a history we need to know, and we need to understand what has happened, because it's not been, nobody cares what happened to us. So what's all this about? There's, for example, there's a child in one of the pictures, a 2-year-old, where they killed his parents, mother and father, and left him with a left hand cut off. They feared because he might become another Biafran intellectual of tomorrow. So he was in tears and a lot of pain. There's a woman who arrived. The eye of this harmless woman was gouged with a dagger by the soldiers of the Nigerian army. And she was forced at gunpoint to eat her own eyeball. Some were burned while they're still alive, and of course some survived. Anyway, so it was horrific. So what's all this about? So what did the Easterners do when they arrived? As these guys were pouring in with tales, which is unbelievable, the Easterners, the music we played at the beginning, Onwuzurua, because there's no village or town in Igbo land or Eastern region then that wasn't affected. We're talking about nearly 2 million human beings had to rush back. Majority from the north, but also there was an exodus from Lagos. In the Yoruba towns, there were door written "So brother," so you know which one to go into, which one not to go into. The language was turned against us. If they knocked on your door and they said "Toro," what is Toro? Toro is one of the tuppence, like a money, a coin. So the way the Igbo say Toro is different from the way the Yoruba say Toro. Toro. If they suspect that you're Igbo by saying Toro, it doesn't matter how long you live in the country, they killed you. So Lagos was not safe. Even Chinua Achebe, as I mentioned when I started this program, he said his pen mightier than the sword. Well, they were coming after Chinua Achebe to test whether his pen is mightier than the sword, because they were after him. I don't think he stood around to find out. He returned to the East, as if you read his book. So the intellectuals were after them and hunting them and gunning them down, and some of them escaped back to the East. So one of the responses then was to make sure this is documented, which brings to mind all these killings that's happening currently in the East. They all need to be documented. The Obibo killings, the Headbridge killings, the Mpo massacre, all these need to be documented. They're all human beings. It's sad that the killings still going on, even after so many years of what we just described, where it was estimated that between 30 to 100,000 people were killed with a planned genocide. Some people have trouble calling it genocide. Well, it's a slaughter. And that slaughter is targeted at certain particular genotypes, certain particular tribes. So it's a geno slaughter, if it makes it easier for you to accept that people were killed needlessly. So, what did the Eastern government do? We're talking between September, from July until January. So, Ojukwu, who was then in charge, called the Northerners, the Hausa people who were living in the East, spoke to them in fluent Hausa, and said to them he cannot guarantee their safety. Used the military that he had and the police that he had not to kill them, but to escort them out of the East. Some went by road across the Niger Bridge, some went north, some by train. They were accompanied to prevent the anger of the East being vented on them. So he minimized their trauma when his own people were being killed. And extraordinarily, whilst all this was going on, in 1966, Ojukwu was in charge of the East, said that, remember in May, when the first killing occurred, which they call the Araba riot of May, Ojukwu contacted his friend Bayero, Emir of Kanu, and they were reassured that this killing was no longer going to continue. On the strength of that, Ojukwu persuaded his people that this would be the last time we're being killed. So you can all go back. We've got the assurance it'll be okay. You can go back. They went back, and what happened? From May to October, more killings occurred. Ojukwu said in a later interview back in 1970 after the war, I believe it's September 1970, if you read the article, he said if he knew what he knew now, he would have declared Biafra when all this killing was going on in the north, rather than a year later. Okay? And this was his mindset. And if I quote him, 1966, he said, "Indeed, we are braced to face and conquer the challenge of the future," because his people were being challenged. He told them, "We believe that the tomorrow we face, or the battle for survival, will not be won by bullets or savagery. You don't want to match their savagery with your own savagery." Said this battle we face will not be won by savagery, by bullets, but by brain power, by modern skills, and the determination to live and succeed. He also believed, we also believe that out of the carnage and the wrecks of the past will emerge a new breed of men and women, resolute, powerful, and prosperous. So we're already thinking about a way out of this quagmire. And it's not going to match them savagery with savagery, but it's going to overcome evil with good, with brain power, with modern skills, determination to succeed. Okay? So that the generation that will come out from these atrocities will be men and women who have resolution, powerful, and prosperous. So that's the challenge that these killings have brought to us. Let me give you an example. The Jews who survived the genocide, right? They were determined to rebuild their lives after the Second World War. That's probably what we're alluding to. Yeah? You go through, nobody goes through what the Easterners, who are now called Biafrans, went through and remained the same. Our generations of those generations, they find it difficult to talk about it, and you have to forgive them, because it's not worth. Some are so mute by what has happened to them, they don't want to talk about it. So if you mention Biafra, hey, no more killing, but they're still killing us. Okay. Nnamdi Kanu, no, you don't know what happened to us. Well, you got to study it, you got to understand it in order to prevent it in the future. It doesn't go away. Don't sweep it under the carpet. Okay? So those who did this to us have not even accepted that it was wrong. There's no been any apology. Okay? There's no compensation, no restitution. So, in legal terms, it is collusion. The government, the people in authority, colluded with this. And the other time, I gave you a list of those who were involved in the July 29th coup. Most of them ended up being the Nigerian heads of states. There's less said about it, the better. No one has apologized. So I'm going to now turn to the after event, because where are we heading? What do we do now that we've been kicked out from the rest of Nigeria? We have nowhere else to go. Somebody went back to the Sabongari. Let's look at Kanu, for example. Now that the Igbos have left, how are they faring? So I'm going to read you an article from New York Times. This reporter on the 7th of December went back to Kanu. The Sabongari is an area dedicated to where the Igbos used to live. So he went back to see what has happened now that the Igbos have been kicked out. He says here, and I quote, "After the massacre of over 2,000 Igbos in Kanu on September 29, 1966, and the massive exodus of Igbos that immediately followed, New York Times correspondent Lloyd Garrison visited a deserted and desolate Sabongari in Kanu, the eastern Igbo quarters, and filed this report. He said, outside the old city walls in the Sabongari, or strangers' quarters, that's what they call Sabongari, the houses were empty, and the streets were deserted today, except for a stray dog resting on the shade of a tree. The only sound was the creaking of house doors as they swung gently back and forth in the light breeze. Suddenly, a gust of wind blew, several doors shut, and the dog, as if startled by a rifle shot, crouched. The sound left the dog trembling with fear. Even now, more than 2 months after the massacre of the Igbos in the heart of northern Nigeria Muslim. Now, there's little else to remind one of what happened here, except the sight of the occasional litter, the torn Bible on the floor of the Baptist church, and the OK Jazz stationery store. Otherwise, the shops and houses have been stripped of furnishings. They looted everything you had, as if no one ever lived there. 30,000 Igbos once filled these dwellings, but now the Sabongari had become quite simply a ghost town. The bloodbath began on the 29th September, when northern Nigerian troops opened fire on Igbo refugees standing by the airport I've mentioned that earlier. By dawn, northern Nigerians with automatic weapons, civilians with machetes, had swept through the city, burning, looting, and killing. As if by signal, i.e., something planned, most foreign observers here are convinced that the program was planned. The slay spread to other Igbo communities in Nigeria's vast northern region. No one knows how many were killed, but the official census in northern-led military government in Lagos has approved a figure of 7,000. Well, if the government says 7,000 people have been killed, the ratios, if 1,000 killed, they say about 10. So you can imagine how many people must have died. This is considered to be conservative estimate. Yes, of course it is. Now, Northerners here do not talk about what happened unless you ask them. And their responses frequently include the comment that the Igbos had it coming to them. Some samples to say that they were too pushy. They took the best jobs. Oh, so you killed them, see. They weren't content to do business. Oh, yeah. They wanted to run everything. Like in the army, isn't it? Yes. They called us backward because we were Muslims. But we were reading Arabic for centuries while they were still cannibals. Oh, yeah. If there was a plan to rid the North of all Igbos, well, it has succeeded. More than 1 million Igbos living in the North and in many other parts of the Federation have returned to the sanctuary Eastern region. So remember the word sanctuary. That's what Biafra became, this place where Ojukwu said the fleeing compatriots can find rest. They were running for their lives. They came back to their homes. In the East, it is widely believed that the program had religious overtones, or the pogrom had religious overtones because the Igbos are Christians. But of the 32 northern soldiers now in detention, they arrested some people with their roles in the killing. Most from southern half of the region. Okay, so the Christian part of the region, the middle belt, that's the ones they arrested, not the far north, where missionary education was permitted to penetrate. 11 of these held are Catholic, 11 are Protestants, 10 are Muslim. Now, with the Igbo's departure, many predict that the northern economy will be paralyzed. So how did they get around it? Well, the breakdown may yet come. Efficiency has certainly fallen off. They're giving you some credit, guys. And there are some doubts that 85 million groundnut crop can be shipped to Lagos for export. But the trains are gradually beginning to run again because the Igbos or the Easterners were supposed to be running the trains. They're beginning to run again with European engineers. See that? The European engineers are the people who have to bring in to cover the jobs which the Igbos were doing. You would have thought after killing them, then jobs will be created. The Northern will just fill those posts. But oh no, they need European engineers. And then the Northern launched 2-month program to train Northern class. They're now at a crash course to train Northerners, to train the accountants and the adding machine operators that are willing to work because the Igbos have been kicked out. The telephones still work and the mail gets through. The post office, my goodness. Although, it says here, a letter from Lagos may take a week 1 week to arrive in Kanu. Okay. And it says it used to take only 2 days. So when the Easterners were running it, it took 2 days for a letter to arrive from Lagos to Kanu. Now it takes a week after they left. So maybe the Easterners were doing some job, some efficiency. That's why the English appointed them, or the British appointed them to do those posts. And yet from the Northerners, they're taking our jobs. Finally, far too long, says Aminu Kano, one of their politicians, we have been letting outsiders do things for us while we sat back relishing our traditions. A former opposition politician who runs a small trucking concern here in Kano. Now, he says, we will have only ourselves to blame for not advancing to the 20th century, but we must do it ourselves. So that was the account from the New York Times immediately when they kicked out the Igbos from the northern Nigeria. So I'm now going to round up. We had a scenario where an Araba secession coup was planned on the 29th of July, where they killed the head of state, Nigerian first military head of state, who happened to be of Eastern origin. They blamed him for being among the people who plotted the coup, the Nigerian coup of the January 15th, where the middle grade officers, the majors, and those below them, their subordinates, carried out a coup to cleanse the Nigerian, clean up the Aegean cage, Aegean stable, to clean up Nigeria. But the people who are more conservative didn't want this to happen, so they took over from them as a military head, stabilized the country, but the Northerners says, no, you can't do this. It means we have lost power to the Igbos. So they plotted and planned to get rid of adherents who want to unify the whole country and make it more efficient. And everybody was jubilating at first hand for the initial coup. But then they turned it into an Igbo coup through massive use of propaganda, foreign assistance, BBC, and managed to convince the people that the Igbos are trying to take over. So they took over instead and slaughtered them and decided to leave the federation, secede. But the British said, no, that's not how we plan Nigeria. You need to come back. They wrote to the emirs, and the emirs changed the mind of those who wanted to secede, because they now, if they secede, they'll be poorer for it. There's nobody really left to challenge the authority. The Igbos have now been dealt with. They want to deal with Opara brothers, isn't it? Having dealt with them, they now have to decide how on earth are we going to live. So they have conference in Lagos in September. That conference, while it was going on, they had more Igbos killed in the north. So the point of no return was arrived. So those who can escape escaped. The country was now in several camps. Gowon, with the help of the foreigners, tried to keep Nigeria, one by all means. So the next episode in this discussion is what now happens. What do we now do? You kick them out of every part of Nigeria. Nowhere else was safe if you're an Easterner. They blamed everything that had gone wrong on you. You now need to say, why don't we just declare Biafra and go our separate ways? But they went the extra mile, which I think may have been a mile too far. So they went to Aburi, which we're going to talk about next, to decide how to live in the same geopolitical space. Whether they should live slightly apart and everybody contributing their quota or not. So it was the decision made after all this killing that precipitated the Aburi Accord. And they're going to go to Aburi in Ghana because the Eastern delegate can't go to Lagos to discuss it. They get killed. They can't go to Kanu and Kaduna. They get killed. So they have to go outside the country to find out a solution that's amenable, everybody can sign and agree to. So that is where we're heading to next. I cannot do enough discussion on the actual massacre and the murdering of our people. As you hear it and you're not moved with compassion for our people, then there's something seriously wrong with you as a human being. You have genocide that occurred against our people in every part of the world where millions or thousands of people have been asked to flee. Look at the Rwandans. The world recognizes it, that this is what's happened. If you look at Rwanda, this is what happened. But for some unknown reason, we're just killed and nobody seemed to have registered it. Also, I must point out the amazing, if you like, character of the Easterners, that you have 2 million people suddenly poured into your region. There was no United Nations aid. Nobody outside helped to accommodate them. But because of your tradition, Tonyala Wanea mentality, you cannot leave your relative out in the street. You welcome them back, you supported them, you rehabilitated them all by yourself. And the war hasn't even started. That leaves a lot to be commended because of our people, extraordinary courage and forbearance. And they have the courage to face their enemy and say to them, this is what we want. You have kicked us out of this federation. We now want our own country. So, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for listening, because this particular passage is the most painful for what happened to us. And I said, and the war hasn't even started. This is the prelude. If you can imagine, in any country where so many people suffered, and then they come to invade you, to drag you back into where they kicked you out of. That is a bit that annoys me the most. So, Mazi Jonathan, I'm going to leave it there for now.
Mazi, I want you to, as people listening, and I myself, many things are in my head. I want to ask some questions, please. Yes, we have been hearing of this pogrom. I've read it privately, personally, through different angles and books. Now, you talked about how our people, the plan, of which the plan individually, as you pointed out, was revealed to somebody according to his witness, and he tried to go to move and all the rest. Now, I want to ask this. Let's not talk about only or civilians in this case, but the military. According to Madiebo, he won the argument of this, that something was being planned to happen. His life is in danger as the head of state, and he waved it out. He dismissed it. So how can this type of very massive plan go on with the massive influx of our people living there? If they don't massively know about it in order to start doing something about it for their safety. In that case, that is number one. Does it mean that our people, does it mean that our people are really Bakumi? Just in the military, the military, there were many Easterners in the military, and I strongly believe that many of them could hear this, but nothing was done to prevent it by them, or even to create secret awareness. Now, that is number one. Number two question: how was this type of massive plan being carried out or being announced, circulated to the Northerners? You know, it's not only Muslim, it's not only in the mosque, because yes, we know that all these things in the mosque also, but there were many Northern non-Hausa or non-Fulani or non-Muslims that participated, even to different parts of the north central, we call it. So we cannot say that they had it in the mosque, the plan, in order to slaughter the Igbos. How was this not able to permeate into the minds of our people, and they concentrated only on their work? They were working, they were clerks, they were doing this and that for the money, for around the back. And this thing is still going on till today. This is the second point. I want you also, if you can, to talk about it. Now, the third point: how did this thing that happened in 1966, the war broke out, they brought the war to us, they didn't finish there killing us in the north and the west, they came to our land, and 1970 the war ended. Roughly 4 years, not a long time, not even 20 years, no, 4 years, of which 4 years is nothing. And our people still rushed back to the north. Mazi, you know, sometimes when you are analyzing this inside you, you say, really, does our people really value their lives? Not only even rushing back, they started investing heavily, living the same Bakumi life, investing heavily immediately, because I strongly believe that many people that suffered that program, or their relatives suffered, they still went back. Mazi, what type of mindset is this? Why is it so? Please, Mazi, if you can quickly double into these three issues, please, before you close. Go on, Mazi.
Okay. Thank you very much. This is a really pertinent question because it's affecting us. History is nothing unless you learn from it, isn't it? That's really a summary of what you're alluding to. If you learn from your history, then you don't make the same mistake. Let's go back to your first point, the planning in the north. Yes, they could use the mosque. There's something called Nasarawa, I think it's Nasara Club. I believe it's either in Kanu or Kaduna, where to be a member, you have to be a northern, northern authority. Remember, before the whole thing broke out, Bello made sure that all the key posts in the north is controlled by them. So as an outsider, although you're Nigerian, you're not allowed to hold an important post. So they control the police in the north, the army, the formation of Nigeria. There's only one battalion in the east, 2 in the west, and one in Ibadan, 1 in Abeokuta, and in Lagos, so ceremonial troops or garrison in Ikeja. But I counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, up to about 18 other formations were all in the north. So militarily, they are well advanced in how they plan, because the Britain wants to make sure the North looks after their interest in Nigeria. So that is part of the planning. So someone like Mazi, you mentioned earlier, was deliberately sent to the North to act as one of the judges of a panel on the 28th, 29th of July, knowing that from Kaduna, he's not going to escape as a senior officer who trained with Yakubu Gowon. Gowon, supposed to be someone he knows as his friend, send him to the north, to Kaduna, on the night of the coup. Okay? And he was supposed to be moving to UK for further training. So he persuaded him to go to the north to be part of the army panel to inspect officers or whatever. So he found himself trapped in Kaduna, and he has to find his way back to his hometown. When he came back, to cut a long story short, they were giving thanksgiving for his life. They've already buried him because they thought he died in the north. Because it's from the July 27th to around the 14th of August. He was missing. Nobody knew where he was. So he managed to escape by being very, very suspicious that they were going to kill him. So he escaped that. So the planning was unbelievably well orchestrated, and they had plenty of time to plan it. The agendas are mentioned, why they plan to get rid of everybody is so that they can have a North that will take over the whole Nigeria, because there's no more challenges to them. In the military, there are about 800 troops from Yoruba origin. The officers in the army, 60% were of the Eastern origin. So if you kill most of them in one night, there's no more challenges to the military, because the infantry was made by Midwest, Middle Belt, the TV faction. So they easily control the military and the police. So once you get hold of those machineries, the security, nobody can challenge you. But the interesting thing, they wanted to pull away. But the British persuaded them or dissuaded them from running up and to take charge and carry on looking after the cage on their behalf. So the planning they made, they didn't even have control over it. Even though after killing all these evil people, they ended up going back into the British hand. So have they developed since then? No. Are they in charge of Nigeria? No. They're still foreign run in a way. So they have failed because of their planning, the amount of people they killed, and so on. But it was thoroughly planned. Make no mistake about it. I've forgotten the remit of your second question about the military. Maybe I'll get it. You mentioned that the third bit is that why do we rush back to Lagos and to the north? Let me take the Lagos first. First of all, the place they wanted to rush back to was around Port Harcourt, where they built the houses there. But those houses, they were not allowed to go into them. They were called abandoned property. So they can't go to Port Harcourt to reclaim the houses they built. They don't have any money they can call on in their bank, because all these people that ran away from the north, you didn't have time to pack your bag, take your bank account, or save anything. Their money was locked in the bank. And after the war, that money was taken away from them. And these banks are subsidiary of British banks, the Standard Life and all those places. They knew this money belonged to the Igbos, but they didn't give it back to them. So you have a scenario then, in your own hometown, there's nothing they're building. You have to survive. So most of them set off and they were traveling back to Lagos. When they got to the head bridge, there was a fight. They weren't allowed to come. They were literally to fight their way back in to Lagos. Now, some of them had houses. So they went and made sure those houses were secured. In Yoruba land, some of the Igbo people's houses, okay, was actually given back to them. And I remember as a young lad on my way to UK, a parents' building in Apapa was still preserved. So it was given back and we were able to recover it. So the issue was that people had to go back because there's nothing in the East for them to rebuild. So they have to go back and claim what belongs to them. That was the rush. Then the Ojukwu encountered them because not only did they get back, they forgot, as you said, what happened to them. So rather than investing back in their hometown in the East, they forgot that all the things I just discussed that happened to them, they forgot all about it and started being, Agadaba Chirozo of Lagos, yeah? Ezonyagwalam of Kanu, and all that nonsense. So having a title was so important, and they didn't think that they had to invest at home. So they invited Ojukwu to come and open one of their, chieftaincy claim in Lagos. So Ojukwu joined them, and Ojukwu, as you know himself, he has to recover his father's properties. They weren't going to give it to him, so he has to fight and go to so many times in the court before he recovered some of his father's properties in Lagos. Now, Ojukwu then came to one of their gatherings, and he said he looked around and saw all they have been able to build, all these markets and so on. He said, Ibukweni, hey, Bukweni, hey, Kwezweni, hey. They didn't say Bukweni. He said, Ewu, Kwenu, hey, Ewu, Kwenu, hey, Kwenu, hey. And then he dropped the mic and walked out. That's how angry he was. This is just to buttress your point, that they have not learned anything. So Ojukwu reminded them of what they have done, calling them Ewu. Ewu, of course, means a goat. Yeah? You haven't learned anything because you're building and developing Lagos. And now, surprise, surprise, so many years later, they're having these mansions, these buildings, this market being burnt and being moved along. If you're building a road from Calabar to Lagos, the best place you're going to start demolishing is the house of those from the East. Yeah? After their sweat and blood. So, have we learned anything? It is so unfortunate that they're not treated as fellow citizens. And they feel that one day that would happen by accident. So when Nnamdi Kanu comes and tells them that all these properties you have outside, the eastern part of your Biafra land territory will be secured when you have Biafra. Okay? It's like a Ghanaian having a house in Lagos. You don't hear them being pulled down and demolished. The Ghana government will take it up. So if you put your hand and secure your base, let's say Biafra, and any of these buildings are demolished, the people running that part of the world, we have to answer in the world, in The Hague and places like that, why are you demolishing their properties? And they have to pay compensation for it. But at the moment, because you run into them and they can do anything they like, because you have not found who you are, you don't know your rights, and they can treat you anyhow. So I don't know if, Jonathan, I'm answering your question. It's very, very complex, hydra-headed, because of all the suffering that people have gone through. And you cannot talk to them because they feel they know better. Nigeria is theirs, but Nigeria doesn't want them. And they don't get it. They have not got it. They never get it. So any attempt to get Biafra is like, oh, you're trying to start another war. Well, did we start the first one? Okay, so it's lack of understanding of their history. And that's really responsible for their mindset. And it's very, very unfortunate. And don't make any excuse for those who are, tormenting and marginalizing and destroying all their potentials. It's just that anyone who's rejected by others cannot reject himself. You have to learn to gather yourself and decide collectively that as a people, when you work together, you get a better response from those who are, chasing you. You can fight them harder to stop all the killing. I don't know if I've answered your question, Mazi.
Yeah, Mazi, you did anyway, but we must continue. I know at the last day of this program, there will be many questions because honestly speaking, sometimes I don't get it. The mindset we have, our type of sentiment, being sentimental, that beclouds our sense of reason most of the time. And it is one of the main problems we are having as a people. So it is very, very sad. People, there is no... Mazi, you see, Armenia still fought or is still fighting for the genocide that was committed against them by Ottoman Empire even during the First World War. They continued fighting until it was recognized after more than 100 years. But in our own case, that is not how many years, people are saying, no, let us leave. But Mazi, sometimes I cannot get it, honestly. Now, we must continue because lacking this sense of history is our problem. Is the problem we have, and we must continue pushing in order to continue creating awareness. So, Mazi, please go on.
But also don't forget,
yes.
The lack of awareness is a deliberate design. Because after the war, you're not allowed to mention the word Biafra. They even removed Bight of Biafra from the map in 1974, so that the word Biafra would disappear. But how can the word disappear when Biafra is bombed into those who survived the war? Okay, it's everywhere. It smells Biafra. You have Biafran spirit in you. It just doesn't disappear.
No, Mazi, in the case of Biafra, talking about the word Biafra, 1966 Biafra was not declared. Why didn't our people continue, enlightening, even through orally, what happened, the pogrom that at least happened to us pre-Biafra declaration? It's not about Biafra first. You understand?
That's the point I made today. It was been documented in the Onyuku's inquiry. The Tribunal, Onyuku is a Justice GCM Onyuku. We need to read it, but they would not allow you to read it because it would document the atrocities. So anyone who knows... who wants to understand their people need to have this published and need to be reading it in their schools and universities, all sorts of places. They have a sound knowledge of the history. That, as I said, was abolished after the war. And anyone who raises the Biafra is suspected and squashed. So you had a vacuum. Yeah, there was a vacuum of the knowledge about Biafra until there was a beginning of resurgence. So Nigeria won the war, but they lost the peace because of the way they treated those who survived the war. They were prepared to forget about what happened to them and start afresh, which they did. But you keep reminding them that they are not part of the country, they cannot be trusted to run the country, then why have you got them? So it's only then the awakening, and people like Mazi and Kanu have arrived, and to make sure this injustice does not carry on. Okay, that is why it's a strange situation for them. They thought never again would Biafra ever rise because of the way they went about it. You take people's money, you give them £20. And people say, oh, every Biafra was given £20. Lie. Not every Biafra was given £20. If you had more than £20 in your account, let's say you have £2,000 in your account, you are only allowed to withdraw £20. Some people were so upset that they died of heart attack. Okay? If you had £18, you're not going to be given £20 because they don't give you £20. Okay, so therefore, the money that belongs to them was not given back. In the Second World War, Germany was devastated. Yeah, they decided to have a Marshall Plan. The Americans actually generated funds to rebuild Germany. But Biafra was devastated during a war that they didn't cause, but even their own money was not given back to them, and their land was not it was not reconstructed. They had the 3 R's, which nobody bothered to work on. Regeneration and rehabilitation started in Lagos. They built First Tech Town and then moved the capital to Abuja, whilst the area where the war took place was ignored. So there's a lot, if you think about it, Mazi Jonathan, that on the one hand you can blame our people, but by moving and citing everything outside the Biafra land and only having the military barracks in the middle, and now they've gone to your forest to camp there, it's difficult for you to actually develop because they do not want you to develop. They want to kick out all the people, in a way continuing the plan to leave only helpless people in the land so they can take over. So we need to understand that and wise up to that situation. So there's a lot to discuss.
Of course, there is. Maz, if you have any potentials, please move on in a jiffy so that we close, honestly.
Thank you very much. Everyone, thank you for listening. There's a lot we can discuss. This is the most painful part of the discussion of our history because the killing occurred before the war. And as we discussed after the Aburi, the blockade started even before the war. And what I want us to do is to have learned what we could have done differently to enhance the survival of the people. And by understanding the history of what went down, we'll be able to overcome. So Juku was very, very positive. And we're so blessed in the sense that if it wasn't for Juku, I don't know what would have happened. He says the war that we're fighting will be judged not by how many territories we conquered and so on, but how many lives we were able to preserve. Because if you start with the knowledge that they're going to be wiped out, yeah, and we look at all the figures, all the arguments and so on, Nigeria, armed to the teeth, they use their weapons to clear the forest with the amount of bullet they can pour, generate is awesome. But our people withstood them, built their own weapons, and survived, and saved as many lives as they can, so much so you defeated them, but you have not destroyed them. Okay? So I think that famous phrase about the go tell the Spartans, obedient to their call, we fought. Spartans died but never surrendered. But in the Biafran situation, go and tell your generations that Biafrans fought. Yeah? They surrendered, but they never defeated. So there's a nature what the Juku brought to the table was the mindset that the injustice was so much that we could only but survive. There's no way around it. There was an amazing leadership he showed. People accused him of being a dictator. He was too arrogant. He was this and he was that. But when I read this passage, and I'm going to finish with it, that we are braced to face and conquer the challenge of the future. We were challenged as a people. We believe that the tomorrow, what's going to happen in the future, yeah, is the battle for survival will not be won by bullets and savagery, yeah, but by brain power, okay? The modern skills and determination to live and succeed. If you're determined to live as a people and to succeed against great odds, which most people have managed to do, he says we also believe that out of the carnage, all this killing, the bloodshed, the mayhem, and the wrecks of the past will emerge a new breed of men. Are we ready? Have we got this breed of men and women that will be resolute, powerful, and prosperous? So that is where we're heading. So Biafra, in our heart and our mind, is amazing because in spite of what happened, Biafra blooms. And we talk about this in the future. Thank you very much.
Biafrans and lovers of freedom, honestly speaking, our history is filled up with sadness. But there is nothing we can do. It's past. It's past. It's our history. We can't deny it. But we must never forget it. You know, the reason, like the question I asked, we are behaving in this Bakomi way because of lack of understanding of our past. You know, if you in every car, there are rear view mirrors, side glasses, through which, as you're driving, you are watching your back, because your back also guides you to where you are going, to how you are moving. Without using your side mirrors, I mean your rear view mirrors, you will eventually crash because you are not seeing your back. So what am I trying to say? What we are doing is just glancing on our rear view mirrors. This will guide us to the way we are going. Without understanding our past, we cannot even be able to go, march to our future. It will be impossible. Israel today, they never stop talking about the Holocaust. They never stop talking about it. You don't joke with them on their Holocaust Memorial Day. You don't joke. They don't joke with it. But look at our 30th May. Some people might be seeing it as which is, this is a very bad type of statement or bad type of mentality. We should never forget our past because it guides us to our future. Therefore, as you are listening to this history, remember 30th May is our Heroes Remembrance Day. Heroes and Heroines Remembrance Day. Those that died that we might live. Biafra land should be under lock and keys. We must make sure to remember them. Let us understand our past so that it will guide us to our future, to our destination. Thank you for listening. Biafra remains our ideology, our number one religion. It is our roots. It is everything we have. Without it, we are doomed as a people. From me, Mazi Jonathan Chinedu, from here, including Mazi, Lois Ukachi, it is simply good evening.